we're going to have Mr. Cassius Stuart as well from the Bahamas. Welcome, Mr. Stuart.
It
Dr.
is
Stuart, I need to say.
it is
Dr.
so
Stuart.
good to see you, Marcia. Always good to be on your show, and it's always a pleasure to be able to speak to the Caribbean at large and to address the growing concerns that we have across the Caribbean region.
Yes. Sir, I want to once again, I know you're a busy man, and we spoke last night and you told me you'd come on and you're right here, and I don't want to take it for granted. I want to say thank you, and we love to hear from you. You're one of the voices in the Caribbean that you speak with such authority. And I love to talk with you, especially on these issues. Now, you would have been listening to Senator Naked, and as I asked him about whether he thinks the crime is being organized regionally. And I want to start our discussion there before I go into your specific situation, because you do have officials that have been charged. That have they been charged yet or just arrested in your country?
Charged one, the police officer in charge of CID was also arrested for
What
some
is CID? Let's spell it out.
criminal investigation department.
Yes. Uh-huh.
There was implications with some bank robbery and
What?
so on. So he's being charged right now. That's not the same Elvis Curtis who is being charged for conspiracy to import drugs into the U.S.
That
So
is the senior superintendent that has
yeah,
been charged to
yeah, yeah.
cocaine. This is a cocaine. Dave, can you put up the article for Bahamas, please? Yes. So go ahead and let's talk about the
So
Caribbean, and then we're gonna, yeah.
these issues speaks to a great concern and a growing concern about the mistrust amongst our institutions. Institutions like the police force, whether it be the Bahamas, Barbados, we should always respect those institutions, and the men and women who hold rank in those institutions should always remain above board. Now, to see that the man in charge of the criminal investigation department is being investigated for allegedly being a part of some bank robbery and murder is scary.
And murder.
Yes, and so yeah, so that's the alleged. It's alleged that there was some of the guys who were a part of it was also murdered. Not saying he did it, but that's some of the allegations that are circling in that circle. But these are very scary times we live in, because we need to hold our police department at a higher standard. And when you put on the uniform, you have to be above reproach and above board. And for you to get entangled in these types of crime speaks to a serious problem in our society. To see that the commissioner of police in Trinidad arrested, it speaks to a serious problem in our society. And so we need to demand accountability. And like I said, I think the next generation of leaders in the Caribbean need to become very, very angry and to speak to the leadership across the board. We have to demand better from our leaders. And if they're not suited to do better, then we need to replace them, because you cannot wear the uniform and still be entangled in this level of criminality or any kind of criminality. Because when you decide to become a law enforcement officer, then you are the one enforcing the law. You cannot be the one breaking the law. And so if you are the one breaking the law, then the whole society breaks down. And so what's happening now, the young people throughout the Caribbean have no respect for law and order, because they say the law officers are breaking the law, and therefore they have a right to break the law too, and they are right, because the way the law works is that the law is nobody can break the law. If any one person can break the law, then everybody should be able to break the law. And so we should be across the board where the law cannot be broken. And so for these law enforcement officers who break our law, it sends a bad message to the next generation that it's okay to commit crime, and that is not okay.
Yeah, because the crime in Bahamas, just like here in Barbados, I mean, it's like hitting the roof, right?
Yes,
Um,
we have. Yes, we have a high murder rate, and we also struggling to deal with, rape and murder, and so we have our share of problems in the Bahamas, And I also see what's going on in Barbados. I see what's going on in Trinidad. I need to tell you that, I was robbed in Trinidad at gunpoint at several years back, a couple of years ago. And so, these things are scary for us as a nation, but as a community, as a Caribbean community, we have to speak with one voice, that we will not tolerate crime, we will not tolerate criminality, and we expect better from our leaders, whether they be politicians, whether they pastors, whether they the police officers. We expect better and we demand better. And so if you're not fit to wear the uniform, whether you are in the church, whether you are on the force, whether you are in the courts, you need to leave. You need to not be in this position, because we want better leadership across the board in the Caribbean. And
So,
this is
so,
coming from the
so,
next generation.
but Cassius, Dr. Stewart, I love what you're saying there. That as a Caribbean, we need to demand this of our leaders, because if the leaders are breaking the law, if our police is breaking the law, what is going to happen, to in the society? But how do we go about that as a region? What are you doing in your country, and what would you suggest we do as a region?
Well, I think we need to bring it up at CARICOM. I'm not sure when CARICOM meets again, but I think we also need to send letters into the CARICOM secretariat to let them know that, listen, the next general meeting or heads of meeting, we need to demand more. We need to demand more from these institutions that we call leaders. And so we as a community, we could make our voices heard through the CARICOM secretariat. And but we have to send our letters in. We have to let our voices be heard, because when they sit in these general meetings, they need to know that the communities, civil society, and different pockets of communities throughout the Caribbean are saying that, listen, we are concerned about the level of criminality, not just necessarily in the population, but in the leadership on these and in these major institutions.
And you think that that would bring some change?
Well, I mean, it's a beginning point. It's a beginning point. I mean, remember now, we all come from these society, because um, whether you're a police officer or politician, you all come from the citizenry, and if the
Mm-hmm.
citizenry has problems with discipline and leadership and understanding the rule of law, then when they move from the citizenry and get elevated to institutions like the police force, they take with them their attitudes and their behavior, and
Mm-hmm.
so we need to practically build better individuals. And so social engineering is what we need in the Caribbean. We need to build better individuals. If you can build a better individual, you will have a better country. The
Mm-hmm.
problem is the individual, they are flawed. And because we have flawed individuals, these same flawed individuals are elected to parliament. They are selected to be in the police force. They are selected on the defense force. They are judges, and they take their flaws with them. And so we need to build better individuals. And so part of the problem is that the same way we take time out to socially engineer, to engineer buildings, we need to
Mm-hmm.
engineer human beings. And we try to figure out, we think that it's not possible, but if you look at the way the Asian country are now structuring and socially engineering their citizens, they are disciplined, they follow the rule of law, and they know what it is to be a part of societal
So
norms.
give me an example of that. In say take you talk about engineering and individuals. So I want us to bring it down, so that the average person listening can understand it. A mother, a child at home. How do you begin to build a person, the right kind of a person?
But every individual comes from a family. And these
Mhm.
families who have children, the mothers who have children, some of them are not trained to be mothers. And so society needs to be a part of equipping mothers to be mothers and fathers to be fathers. And so
Mm,
we need civil society to be a part of strengthening the family structure, so that they can pass on the value system into the children. So when the children grow up, they understand what societal norms are, what to
mhm.
respect the rule of laws, how they should respect the rule of law, and how to be proper citizens, so that no matter where they land in whichever part of the world, they understand how to be disciplined. In the Bahamas, we have a phrase in our constitution where that it says that we the successors of these family of islands recognize that our freedom will be guaranteed through a national commitment to self-discipline. Now, that's the first tenet. The self discipline is what we lack throughout the Caribbean.
Mhm.
And so, even though that's a part of the preamble of the Constitution of the Bahamas, it is so important because when I raise my children, I have to raise them to understand what is discipline. That if you see $5 on the street, that's not yours, so you cannot take that. If you
Mhm.
see someone doing drugs, you have to tell them that is wrong. If you see
Mhm.
somebody out of line, because we have to engineer people. Now, how do you engineer people? I mean,
Yes.
for those who follow scripture and those who read the Bible, if you read what Moses said to the children of Israel, he said, "Write the laws on your hands, write it on your doorpost, write it everywhere, so that when you wake up, you could see it." In other words, it's a constant repetitiveness of who we are as a people, what we need to do, and how we are to behave in our society. And so, the preamble of our Constitution, the rule of law, should not just be on the paper anymore. It should be written in the hearts of every citizen. The problem is that our leaders have from the 60s and 70s, we wrote on the paper the preamble of these constitutions and the rule of law, but it still remained on the paper. It was never written in the hearts of the people. One of the greatest example of this is Singapore. Lee Kuan Yew knew what needed to be done. And so he was able to write on the hearts of every Singaporean what it is to be a Singaporean and what it is to understand the rule of law. And this is why they stand now as number one in education, number one in sports, number one in cleanliness and low crime rate, because they understand it's you don't need to tell them to be disciplined. It's in their heart. They wake up in the morning, that's who they are. The
Mhm.
problem is in the Caribbean, the laws are on the paper. The law needs to be written in our hearts now. And that takes strategic leadership and that takes social engineering.
Wow. That is some doing, because I'm listening to you, and I'm saying that, thinking about my own children and how we will drill those kinds of things in them. If my child comes home with money or anything from school, he's going to get lashes. He has to get it, bring it back. I go to the teacher. I go through all of that. He has to apologize to the class. All of that is what we do as
Precisely.
parents.
That's
So
it. That's
how is it, how can we put that into policy now, so that that policy translates into every home, get into every home, and we really begin to change behavior? Because you are right, something has changed over the years in the Caribbean. Something has definitely changed. How do we begin to put, yeah, we put it in policy, but how do we get it integrated in homes and actually practically working?
Remember now, the African community is for the last 2,000 years had more an oral tradition. And that oral tradition was not only about the history, but it was also about behavior and how you act and how you respond. And so while there was nothing written, it was passed on from generation to generation to generation of certain behavior and how we are to act. Now,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're in Barbados or you're in the Bahamas or you're in Trinidad, if you are from the African diaspora, we all understand the same thing because
Mm-hmm.
our ancestors passed some things on to us. We know
Mm-hmm.
that we understand that we have to discipline, we have to be disciplined. And so what happened now is that we are now inculcated with another type of virus coming in from America. The virus is you cannot discipline your children no more. Well, this was the past. You cannot discipline your children in school. The teachers cannot discipline the kids no more because they are outlawed discipline, corporal punishment. And so we have a society where we cannot touch the children. Remember now, foolishness is
Mm-hmm.
bound up in the heart of a child, but the
Right.
rod of correction will drive it far from him. So we told God that, listen, you don't make any sense anymore. Discipline children is outdated. You are old and your theories are old, God, and therefore
Yeah.
you see, America now is falling apart with guns in the street, guns in the school, guns everywhere. The kids are bringing guns because the teachers cannot discipline the children. And so in the Bahamas, we have now adopted the same theory. In Barbados, we adopted the same
Yeah.
woke ideology that you cannot discipline children. And the minute you reach to the point where you allow the foolishness that is bound up in the heart of a child to grow, it spills out into the street, it spills out into the community, and these children become murderers, rapists, and so on and so on.
Yeah, but don't you think? I mean, I'm truly enjoying this conversation, but I'm wondering if we're just talking, because I see people. There are people that are on, they're watching, And I would love to hear what they think about what you're saying, because as you're talking, Dr. Stewart, I'm looking at my own family and my boys. And we did not spare the rod in our family, because the thinking was, if we did not lash those boys, the police is going to lash. Somebody's going to
Right?
do it.
Exactly.
Either the teacher, the police, somebody outside of our family going to do it at some point. And I had boy children, and our thinking was that none of you going to end up in prison, and none of you, you're going to live a disciplined life. And I thank God, and thank God for my husband, who's also a disciplinarian. That our boys, I every time I give God thanks, because you have to, it's a daily thing. You can't be bragging about these things. It's a daily thing. But do you think, though, that we will ever get back to that place where we understand the importance of disciplining our children?
It's leadership. It's leadership in every Caribbean island that says, listen, we are not going to be dictated by another man's country as to how we discipline
Mm,
children. And so what we have, that's because you have Amnesty International and you have human rights, this group, which is headed by a bunch of woke individuals who don't really care about human rights, but they just want to push their agenda. And if we are led by them, then we will never change. But if we have leaders in the Caribbean who say, listen, we're going to do this the way we believe it's going to work. We're going to allow we're going to allow the schools to discipline children when they are out of order. We're going to allow parents to discipline children when they're out of order. Now, there are parameters. Now, some parents get out of hand. They try to half kill the children. We're not saying half kill children, but you discipline your children. And
mhm.
so whether or not we could draw the line, because some parents don't understand what disciplining is, and so that's the issue right there. That's the soft spot. But we need to be to the point where we bring back discipline in our society. The reason
Mhm.
why the police officer can commit crime because he lacks discipline, because
Yes.
he lacks discipline. And so we need to understand that that discipline comes from an inculcation of the laws, societal norms, and who we are. And what we do is, I mean, I have four daughters, and my wife, we try our best to, if I could use the word, brainwash them into understanding what it is to do right all times.
Mhm.
Be the best person, be the right person, always do what is right. And you got to brainwash them every day.
Oh, he dropped out. He dropped out. Hello? That was going so well. He dropped out. If I don't know, Dave could reach out to him, let him know that he's off. If he doesn't realize that he's off. Yeah, but what do you guys think about what he's saying? Because sometimes we have these discussions and you wonder if it makes any sense, because we have gone so far at this point. In my mind, to me, we have gone so far. Can we really get back there, is the question. Can we really get back there? Huh? That's a question that we have to ask. Can we get back there? Right? Antonio is saying it makes so much sense, because when you think about it, if we don't discipline, somebody's going to discipline those children. Your child is cute now, and he's doing, or she doing, cute things, and they slap you in your face and you think it's cute. They eat and spit something on you, you think it's cute, and you're laughing, and it's funny, and say, oh, but no, 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 no. If you don't discipline the teacher, and then when the child goes to school, they try to slap the teacher too. They try to spit on the teacher. They try to throw things at the teacher, and the teacher is not in a position to discipline that child. Think about it. There's some parents, if the teacher even put the child in the corner to stand up, and they come home and tell the parents, they go and quarrel with the teacher. The teacher and the principal, they have no power. So our society has broken down. And this is why some of our little black boys, we see the police take them and kicking them and beating them all about. Because we did not that they're right in doing that. I'm just saying that we did not set the boundaries in the home and we did not discipline. What are your thoughts about it? Are we just chatting here? This don't make any sense. Their grandparents listening, their aunties, their uncles. Do we want to see a change in the society? Do we believe in this social engineering that he's talking about? What are your thoughts? I want to hear from you. Okay, Dr. Stewart, you're back.
Yes, sorry I got kicked out for a while. But it's time for us to now wake up and understand that what we've been doing over the last 20 years has not been working. We're adopting a new type of methodology to governance, to family parenting, to family life. It doesn't work. The method that made us who we are as Africans and members of the African diaspora, that's who we are. That's what made us who we are. We built societies with that. We need to go back to those core values, go back to family. Family is the most important part, and every family is made up of individuals. And remember now, there was an African proverb that said, it takes a village to raise a child.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody used to discipline the child. Everybody was the mother. Everybody was the father in the village. So there was no one parent, this is my child. Everybody was the parent. And so that's how we need to adopt those policies, because we understand we are still in communities. Every community, whether it's in the Bahamas, whether it's in Kingston, whether it's in Mobay, whether it's in Trinidad and Tobago, we have communities, and so we have to understand that we got to use the strength of those communities to raise our communities and say, listen, this is what we believe, and this is what we accept, and this is what we don't accept. But we also got to hold our elected leaders more accountable, because you know, I find that throughout the Caribbean, when people are elected, they automatically feel like they're endowed with a certain degree of wisdom from on high, and they are untouchable. And the general population feel that because they are elected and they are a member of parliament and they are cabinet ministers, that you cannot advise them. These people still need to be advised that, listen, there are certain things that we expect from you, and there are certain behaviors we expect. We demand accountability, and we want our countries to be run the right way. And the people got to demand that. And if the leaders are not doing what they need to do, then the people need to say, listen, we do not accept that type of lifestyle from our leaders. We demand accountability. And so
Yeah.
that's where we need to be.
Yeah, and as you're talking about that, I don't know if Dave could put back on the screen I want to read to the listeners what has happened in the Bahamas just before Christmas. Was a big issue in Bahamas where it was a senior superintendent who is now charged with cocaine, what do you call it, smuggling cocaine into the country,
Into the United States.
into the United States. So
Yes.
it says here, the Bahamas police commissioner has resigned. This is actually the police commissioner.
Yeah,
Eh,
he resigned.
Wow.
He resigned because under his leadership, there was a lot of instance of failure under his ranks. He was never implicated in anything, but he resigned because I think it was too many different issues under his watch, and so he stepped down. And now we have our first female commissioner of police, and hopefully she can bring a new, I guess, a new life to the force in the Bahamas, and hopefully we can have that level of accountability that we were asking for. But we want to see this across the board, whether you're in St. Lucia, we want to see it in Jamaica, we want to see it in Trinidad, St. Kitts and Nevis. And so all these Caribbean countries, all of us face the same thing. All of us face the same struggles. All of us have the same desires, and all of us have the same breakdown in leadership. But we need to demand more as the people, because the next generation of leaders need to stand up and say, "Listen, if we are not taking it no more." You see what happened in America? Americans decided to shift from one direction to the next, and they choose a new direction. The Caribbean can do the very same thing. The Bahamas can choose a new direction. Jamaica can choose a new direction if the direction they feel they're going in is not a good one. And so, but we have to now encourage the citizenry to speak with one voice, to unite and say, listen, this is what we want for our country.
Yeah. Very well said. He said the Bahamas Prime Minister Philip Brave Davis announced on Wednesday that Clayton Fernando was stepping down, noting that he faces no charges in the case, but that the police department needs a change. And that's leadership right there. I have to commend him for that. I don't know if it's all real, but anyway, I suspect it's a lot of pressure he's getting as well. We are taking
Not
important steps to
enough
restore
pressure.
trust and
Enough pressure.
accountability. Huh?
He had enough pressure because the opposition was pressuring him. He was getting pressures from the citizenry, and they were calling for the resignation of the commissioner of police because there were too many instances of mishap and under his watch, and so the prime minister was then forced to move and act.
But you see, you said something that the opposition was pressuring. What is in terms of your makeup? How many MPs make up the opposition? What's the proportion like?
I think we have a total of 39 seats, and I think five of them are opposition.
Mhm.
Five is opposition, and the rest is government. Barbados have a whole different situation. 100% government, no opposition.
Well, we
Uh,
now have one. We have one person that stepped over. Yeah.
oh, you
So
had one person stepped over. Oh, wow, you got
yeah.
one.
Stop laughing.
You got one.
But your opposition is your voice. I mean, it's five of you, but that makes a difference because then you will also have, senators and so on, opposition senators and so on, and all of you, I guess, were a united voice calling for this for the commission of police to step down.
Yes, yes. I mean, I'm not in the House of Assembly, but I'm an independent voice calling, and I call and I make my points heard nationally and internationally, and so, if I had 1 cent or 2 cents to add to that, I probably did, but it's a unified voice in saying that listen, we need change in the Caribbean, and so, the the thing about Caribbean people is we know what we need to do. The problem is that we get so hooked on parties and personalities that we're blindsided into what we really need in leadership.
Yeah.
We need to focus more on leadership than parties and personalities. And so,
Can you break that down some more and say it slowly? Because I think that is that because we like this is what we do, what we've been doing, and we've been following America with this. If the person is a good speaker, then we believe that that person can lead. If the
yeah,
person speaks well, right, they can sway you, and they're good with words. Those are the people that we choose to lead us, Dr. Stewart. So can you say that a little slow and break that down for us?
but also too, I mean, when you want if you want to build a house,
Hmm.
if I could speak well, that doesn't necessarily mean I could build a house. I need an engineer, I need construction workers, I need a carpenter, I need an electrician. But the man out there who's talking who don't can't do any of those always get the job. And so, the problem is that we are always blindsided. In the Bahamas we've had doctors and lawyers running our countries for the last 50 years. And the problem is that, you know, because you could remember a case or you could cite a case doesn't necessarily mean you know how to build a nation. Or because you can give an injection doesn't necessarily mean you know how to build a country. But the greatest hoax that we have faced in the Caribbean is that doctors and lawyers are the smartest thing in the world. While so they may be good in their discipline, they may be good at what they do. Running a country is a total different animal altogether because you gotta, what I talked about is social engineering. You gotta understand behavioral science. You gotta
Hmm.
understand what it is to deal with individual and bringing people together for one
Hmm.
common goal. And so it's more than just, what we make it out to be, because you have actual human beings who need leadership and who needs training. And then sometimes you have a lot of faulty human beings that could be re-engineered. Some can't be re-engineered, but some can be re-engineered. And so, And so when you're dealing with building a country, you got to deal
Yeah.
with the core. The core is people. You got to make sure that you strengthen your people. Then you got to understand all of the parameters of how do you make sure that you can make the resources of the nation be beneficial to the people. The problem is that we somehow follow the colonial masters and their methodology of running government, where everything was centralized, and so
Mm.
we end up in what I call the centrophobia, where anybody who comes against me is the enemy. If your voice is dissent, if you decide to not agree with me, then you are the enemy. Somebody may have a different point of view as to how to govern, how to administer, how to do things, but in our systems of government, if you do that, then you are the enemy. So it's a coined phrase called the centrophobia, and so we cannot get bogged down into that because that is the methodology that the colonial masters used, where they had centralized power and they used that centralized power to whip the people into shape. But now we talk about free, independent countries. We talk about independence. What is true freedom? How do we reach this true freedom? And it takes leadership to now lead these people into true freedom, where their success is guaranteed not by my allegiance to a political party, but by meritocracy, by what I can bring to the table, what I'm adding. Can I add value to the country, and how did the country add value back to us? And so it's a give and take when it comes. It's called what you call a symbiotic relationship with a country, but it takes leadership to understand how to make that happen. But
Mm-hmm.
I think what happened is that some of the leaders that we've had a narrow-minded view on what governing is. I'm a lawyer and I could write a legislation or I could debate in parliament, but I don't know how necessarily to govern people. But then you get caught up
Wow.
in, they get caught up in what I call the confusion of governance, where it becomes all about me now. How do I empower myself now? And so
Well, hold a minute there, Dr. Stewart. You have said something there that is just so powerful. You said that we've elected lawyers, and these lawyers, they know how to write a piece of legislation, they know how to make laws, but they don't know necessarily how to govern people, how to manage people, how to manage a situation. And I've seen this over and over. Let me ask um the audience, because I want it to sink in. I know you got to go soon, but this is so good. This is so good. Somebody says, are there academic classes on governance that aspiring politicians can take? A degree in political science or law doesn't guarantee nor predict leadership potential. And I think this is what this is what I think is happening to us in the region. We keep electing the same types of people with the same skill sets all the time, and we expect a different result. Isn't that interesting? Let me hear somebody say we need some of them to be psychologists. um I wanted to anybody has any thoughts, any other thoughts? Do you agree or disagree with Dr. Stewart about the type of persons that are not having the right skill set to be able to manage people, govern people? Because a nation is the people, right? But go ahead.
yep.
Sorry. Yeah.
Well, Marcia, what I've learned over the last 10 years and my studies with the correlation between Africa and Caribbean nations, and when you look at the rise of the freedom fighter, from Julius Nyerere to Nelson Mandela was a different kettle of fish. But so all of the African leaders, one of the issues that they had, and Caribbean leaders from John Compton to Sir Lyndon Pinland to Forbes Burnham, one of the issues that most of them had was that they were able to fight for freedom and independence. And
Mm-hmm.
once they gained their independence, that's where everything stopped, because they never had a long-term vision for the countries, just to get rid of the colonial masters. The vision
Ah.
stopped. The vision stopped right where the colonial masters ended.
You're
And
so right, because
that was
that when you begin to study the Caribbean, I did the movie on Errol Barrow, and I was looking at the leaders, and I realized that nothing happened after that. Really, everything that they've done, it's like we're stuck in a time bomb.
yeah.
But go ahead, please.
See, the problem most of them had, and I studied, and my book is being should be released in another month on when the freedom fighters become the slave masters, and it dives into all of the Caribbean nations and all of the African nations from Idi Amin to Robert Mugabe and all of these leaders. The trouble they all faced was that they had a desire and a zeal to liberate the people.
Mm-hmm.
After the liberation, there was no vision for the next step. But when you look at today's date with Paul Kagame in Uganda, he has Vision 2020, Vision 2025, Vision 2050. So he has a
Mm-hmm.
long-term vision for his country, and he's now transforming his whole nation. And so Paul Kagame is now taking his country into a whole new different dispensation. Even in Botswana, they're doing the very same thing with long-term vision. So for most of the Caribbean and African nations, the vision stopped right where the colonial masters ended. And that was the major trouble because they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to govern. They didn't know anything about govern. They didn't know anything about leadership. And then they fall right back into the same methodology of the colonial masters. It was all
Mm-hmm.
about greed. It's all about what we can get, how we can take, and how we can suppress the people to keep the leadership. And so they follow the same truth. So the suppression. So when you look at even Julius Nyerere and all of these great leaders who we love, you see some of their methodologies were mimicking the colonial masters of suppression, the xenophobia, suppressing the masses. Anybody who stand up against them, authoritarian rulership, one party system. So they all moved into that same arena, and they became the very same thing that they fought against. The freedom fighters became the slave masters all over again.
Yes, because we can see what is happening here in Barbados, where they're trying to make us a one party state. Now this whole thing about vision, because that's something, I lead a couple organizations, etc. And a vision is so important, and having a vision is so important, but also in communicating the vision to the people that you are leading. And I find that that is something that our leaders, we don't know where we're going. We don't know what they're doing. And so I see what you're saying in terms of having certain skills, managing people, governing people, knowing how some of our leaders, Dr. Stewart, that are leading us have never completed anything but, I mean, they completed university. They have never started a business from scratch. Do you know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? Or do you
Yeah.
think that those kind of skills are important?
See, what we need in the Caribbean is vision. And what leaders like Lee Kuan Yew did was he brought a vision for his country.
What you
What
mean when you say a vision? Explain, because I want to break it down. Guys, jump in the conversation in the comment section, please. We're reading the comment section. Yeah.
But remember now, Lee Kuan Yew became prime minister in 1965 under the People's Action Party, the PAP, and they broke away from the British. They went under Malaysia, and they became independent. And everybody thought that Singapore was going to collapse because it's a little small piece on the same landmass as Malaysia.
Uh-huh.
Singapore decided that Lee Kuan Yew decided that listen, he's going to invest in his people, and they're going to have a zero tolerance to corruption, but they're going to have a long term plan, and so they put in so much different systems in place, and right now Singapore is perhaps one of the most productive countries on the planet, and so even in terms of what they have, so something called forced savings. He created was something called forced savings, where every citizen of Singapore retires with money because the government puts up a portion and the people puts up a portion, and it's put in an account that they cannot touch, so that when you retire you automatically have money. Now we have something called national insurance in the Bahamas, but we can't get it now because the government spend all the money on whatever they want to spend the money on, and so
The same thing in Barbados. The same
yeah.
thing.
So in Trinidad, the government cannot touch the money because the money belongs to the people. Now, Lee Kuan Yew he made provisions for the people to take portions of the money to buy homes and to buy stocks and to invest it into anything that can grow their money. But they cannot take their money out to go buy this and buy clothes. But also too in the long term though, what they did was any company that came into Singapore, they took the national insurance money and they invested it so that if when Hewlett Packard came to Singapore, they had shares in Hewlett Packard and they had shares in all of the companies so that the returns from the dividends were more than their gross domestic product. So they were yielding resources. So when you look at the Bahamas, we have $3 billion projects on one island. And so what we need to do is instead of us investing in those projects, we gave away land, we gave away duty-free concessions without buying in on those projects. So when the yield comes in, when the casino taxes comes in at $200 million profit, we get nothing from that
Ah.
because we didn't invest in it. And so Lee Kuan Yew did the exact opposite. He made sure that the state invested into everything that comes in so that when the 50-50 split, they make money, the government makes money. And so,
Dr. Stewart, it seems to me that some of our politicians, which is what I was saying, they have never started anything from the ground. They don't know how to build anything from the ground up. They don't start a business. They don't, so because that's a business decision. So to
yeah,
have that is a vision for the country, but you have to have a certain a business mindset to be able to come up with that kind of put that kind of policy in place.
yeah. So even with the Caribbean, one of the issues that the Caribbean face every year is hurricane. And so we know that at some point somebody's going to get hit with hurricane this year. But we don't have a consolidated approach to CARICOM where we have supplies waiting in hand to be able to help any country that is ravaged. So if
Mm-hmm.
Barbados is ravaged next this year, right, we should have had supplies store in one of the islands so that in the event there's a hurricane, we could immediately ship plywood, shingles, roofing supplies to be able to fix homes. I mean, we could put a portion, perhaps 1% of everybody's total budget to be able to put a storehouse together to be able to fix these things, to deal with these things. In addition to that, when you look at food security, the
Mm-hmm.
Bahamas import $1.6 billion, 1.86 billion dollars worth of food every year, and some of the food ain't good. And so we prefer getting more organic food that is grown in the Caribbean. But we have no logistics to be able to ship food from St. Lucia to the Bahamas or from Jamaica to the Bahamas. I was in Cuba the other day, and Cuba had to bring water in from Europe. By the time it's
Mm-hmm.
the water get from Europe to Cuba, it's flat. And so the Caribbean could have been able to meet that demand. And so, but we have no national or no regional approach to being able to deal with the problems that face the Caribbean. And so
Mm-hmm.
for us though, moving forward, that when CARICOM sits down, they need, I don't know what they do at these meetings. I swear I don't know what they do at the meeting. But it seems as if there is no method to the madness. We need to be able to say, listen, this is how we're going to deal with some of the major issues that affect us. Hurricanes, we go around the world talking about climate crisis, climate crisis, climate crisis. Just buy some plywood and sheetrock and some shingles and store them. Don't tell me about climate crisis. We know it coming every year for the last 1,000 years. We had hurricane, and we gonna have hurricane for the next 1,000 years. So ain't nothing we could do to stop it or change it. So
Mm-hmm.
let's prepare for it. And so we have to be able to put these things in place to be able to deal with these situations. And so there's a lot of cross pollinations that we could do between different countries. Jamaica has products that could come into the Bahamas. The Bahamas has expertise in tourism that we could lend to the rest of the Caribbean. And St. Lucia may have crops that they could be able to bring to. And so there's a lot that we can do. There's a lot of synergies. There's a lot of cross pollination we can do. But it just takes leadership.
Oh man, I really hope he doesn't drop out again because this is going so good, isn't
Whoever
it?
is,
Okay, we got you're back. You're back. I was just saying
yeah,
good. I
you can hear
don't
me.
want you to drop out. This is
Yeah,
going so good. You stay
yeah.
right there. This is good. This is good stuff. Continue what you were saying, please.
So, so whichever prime minister is in charge of CARICOM should take the approach of how do we use our synergies, look at which strength that each island has, and see how that we can create the shipping lanes and the synergies to be able to bring products across our borders. And so that's what we need in the region. And so when you look at us now, we're bringing everything from America. The quality of food is not good. They're GMO infested and so on. And so we cannot continuously ingest that because the Caribbean is now hit with higher cancer rate, hypertension, and diabetes, and so definitely the food we're eating is not good. So let's scrap where we're buying our food from, and let's create a regional block where we can get our food from the region, and we can grow more crops in the Caribbean and be able to feed each other.
Yeah. I want to, as you were speaking, sir, Dr. Stewart, I was thinking about um, the whole thing about a manifesto. And again, I want the people who are on to join in the conversation because we want to unlearn some things tonight. Um, I think a lot of our politicians, they mistake a vision for the country for a manifesto. Do you see what I'm saying? Because the
Yeah.
manifesto, they use the manifesto to win. They're using the money. You see what I'm trying to say? They're
Yes.
using the
Yes.
manifesto. They're using the manifesto to win, but the manifesto is not necessarily the vision for the country. What are your thoughts about that?
One of the problems that we face in the Caribbean is we don't have a continuity of government as well too, because we change governments, and when a government is changed, then the policies are changed, and so there is no consistency. So if you have a national plan for education and the next government doesn't buy in and they scrap that and comes in, so because there is no continuity, no consistency, you will have a lot of gaps in vision and gaps in growth. We are not
Hmm.
growing the way we need to grow is because we don't have people who understand that we need a national
Hmm.
plan for each individual country, but then also a national plan for the Caribbean at large. Now,
Hmm.
there are systems in place. We have Lome Convention, Lome 1, Lome 2. Lome allows us to be able to export products into Africa and Asia and the Pacific states. So it's between Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific states, right? But then there's also a regional plan between the Caribbean and Central and South America. So there's trade agreements. Then we also have the trade agreement between the Caribbean and America, the Caribbean Basin Initiative that was signed in 1982 by Ronald Reagan. So
Hmm.
all these initiatives, but we have nothing to produce. I mean, I know Jamaica does some bauxites, they may do some exports and some cement, but there's much more that we can do. And so we need to now find out how do we now look to the strengths that we have in our region, and how do we maximize those strengths. But how do we be able to cross pollinate our resources to be able to benefit each other individual countries? And then once we do that, how do now each countries can make each other rich? And so because interregional trade is very, very big, because most of our trade comes from the United States. And but if we can trade between the Bahamas and Jamaica, St. Lucia and Guyana, and so on, and have interregional trade, it'll be better for us because we have better quality products,
Yes,
particularly
yes.
agricultural products,
One of the things I was thinking, as you were speaking, it's during COVID. Regardless of what we think of COVID and how it was, it came into being, etc. I thought, Dr. Stewart, that COVID was a time that we could, for the first time, truly be Caribbean, truly be Barbadian, truly be Jamaican without all of that influence. I was actually happy at one point where nobody was coming in here, and I was saying, whoa, I was saying to people, man, this is an opportunity for us to work together on and build our country. And I remember I got so excited of the possibility. And I knew that was a time I was going to, I will help this government, they want to get into agriculture. I will try to get my community, their kitchen gardens going, and those kind of things. And as soon as and they were, you would hear the governments, and they were working together. They were talking to each other. You could feel that something was going to happen, right? I
Yes.
don't know if it was in the Bahamas too. And as soon as the place opened up, they dropped all of those things and went back traveling and begging for grants and begging for money and begging. It happened in the Bahamas too.
It happened in the Bahamas. I tell you, there's no difference. If you wake up in the Bahamas or you wake up in Barbados and St. Lucia, it's the same kind, same problems, same situation, same scenarios. It seems as if all of us repeat the same script. It's like we're reading the same script in the same play, but we need to wake up now and change the playbook. We need to change the script, and this is where leadership comes in. We need a better Caribbean. We need better leaders. We need better leadership, and so we need to be able to produce more. And there's no reason why Guyana, which is our Caribbean sister, sells more plywood to China than anybody else when Barbados or St. Lucia needs plywood to build products and so but can't get it from Guyana. And
Mm-hmm.
so, so we have to understand. And so now Guyana is now the fastest growing country in the Caribbean, one, but Guyana has more oil now than Kuwait. And so now Guyana, we have to figure out how do we now get cheaper oil in Barbados and the Bahamas. So right now, fuel in the Bahamas is $7, $6 a gallon. And so we need to be able to say, listen, Guyana, we need some of that fuel. And we could put refineries in the Bahamas to be able to refine some of that oil so that we can get oil prices down to $1 per gallon in the
Yeah.
Bahamas and Barbados. And so, Guyana is poised to make almost $100 billion next year. And so we got to figure out how do we now, as a Caribbean region, tap into our sister Caribbean country and be able to benefit from the resources that she's producing. And so we can't allow. It's negotiation, it's leadership, but we have to say to our countries that we need to be able to get access to some of that cheap oil that Guyana is now producing, and
Mm-hmm.
because everything is run on energy. The cost of living in the Bahamas is so high, it is outrageous. How do we bring the cost down? Energy
Yeah.
cost, energy price. So if we could bring the energy cost down, we can do that. And Guyana has enough oil to feed the entire Caribbean for the next 100 years.
Wow. Can you imagine that? We are blessed. Now, this is a question here. It says, Mr. Stewart, what's your suggestion for getting all of our collective ideas to our leaders and getting them enacted? That seems to be the problem. The citizens being heard by the leaders because there have been so much great ideas. And you're going to answer it. I'm not going to be on the screen, but I'm going to hear you. Okay, so just answer Liana, please.
Well, I think what we need to do, Marcia, is, the problem is that we have no access to the CARICOM heads of government meeting. When they meet, those meetings are closed, and so that's normally the problem. And we don't know what is discussed in those meetings or how the communication goes in those meetings. And so we need to figure out a way how do we penetrate those meetings by putting together a white paper, a green paper, or even, like you said, a manifesto, and say, this is from the citizens of the Caribbean. This is what we want to see in oil, in agriculture, and healthcare, and so on. But it takes the citizen, it takes us to now take the next step to say, listen, CARICOM leaders, this is how we want to see our country, and this is what we want for the future of our country for the next 25 years. So, we could collectively, Marcia, you could spearhead that. I know I'm busy, so you could spearhead that, putting together a collective working group to be able to put ideas together as to what the Caribbean needs and how do we now present that to the CARICOM heads of government. So let me know what you think. I think it'll be a wonderful idea, but I think it takes somebody to spearhead that. And Marcia, you'll be the perfect person to do that.
Listen, I think I'm in so much agreement with you that, I mean, because on this show, and you're coming out with a book that I can't wait to read. And there's so many ideas that have come out, have been suggested, and it feels like it's just going in the wind. I believe that the answers to what's plaguing the Caribbean, it lies in us. I keep saying that, Dr. Stewart, that we are enough. We are enough, and whether, I mean, I think it's not just me, but it's a group of people. that we need to take this thing by the reins, and so you were saying to put a working group together. That's something that we have tried it on different issues. We tried it with the cybercrime bill, as you saw here,
We
and
were
it was the citizens.
yes, and so we were able to advocate and to address that cybercrime bill. I'm not sure what the MIA administration has concluded on that.
It's on hold right now only
It's on
because of
hold.
the citizens.
Wonderful, and so we advocated against that cybercrime bill. And so I'm happy that, and so it takes. You remember we were advocating against the LGBT community flags in the Caribbean, and I sent a letter to the U.S. Congress, and they banned it, and in all countries and around the world. And
Yes.
so it takes us to just put pen to
Mhm.
paper, and say, listen, this is what we want. But the problem is that the leaders think that everything is fine because the citizens ain't saying nothing. If you ain't saying nothing, they think you're okay. And
Yes.
so it's time that you say that, listen, we are not okay, and this is what we want, and this is how we want the Caribbean to look over the next 25 years. This is our broad vision. And there are shining examples. I say Botswana, Uganda, Paul Kagame is doing a wonderful job down there. After taking over from a civil war and a massacre and genocide, 800,000 people get being killed. He was able to transform his country now, the fastest growing country in Africa, the cleanest country in Africa. And so, we could learn from a lot of examples around the world. We could learn from Lee Kuan Yew, who was one of the brightest minds that ever lived. And so
And
we could,
we see what's happening in Burkina Faso is a young leader,
yes,
36 years
yes.
old.
I mean, Abraham Toure, he's doing a wonderful job in Burkina Faso. And what he did was, he was able to break free of the shackles of the French.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't know if Dave can put up his picture.
yeah.
Torre's picture. Torre's
Correct.
picture.
Yeah. So he's doing a wonderful job down there because he's able to break free of the shackles because of course France controlled Africa and they were strangling Africa for the longest, and a lot of the African countries are now being liberated. Even though they were independent, they were not liberated from the French because remember France still printed all of their currencies and France still held all of their foreign reserves and France was controlling all their natural resources, and they were buying them pennies on the dollar. And so they say, listen, we're tired of that. If you buy in our product, you got to buy it at market value now. And so,
Hmm.
Emmanuel Macron is now upset and trying to strangle some of the French countries, African countries, but they're standing up. And so, but that's what we need. We need new leaders, young leaders who aren't afraid to take the blows, but who say, this is what we want and this is how we want our country.
Yeah, we need the chores. The thing is that we sit and we watch these people and we say, "Oh, great they are," but then we are not. That's the thing. As I was saying at the beginning of the show, part of our anthem, Dr. Stewart said, it says we write our names on history's page with expectations great, and I was saying to us that each of us we can be history makers. We can decide what is it we're going to be known for. When we die, what will we be known for? And I believe, Dr. Stewart, as you do, that the answer is in us. Each of us, we are here right now in the Caribbean right now. We are it. We are it. We, whatever it is the Caribbean is right now, we contributed to what it is, and we can change it. I believe that we can do it, and we can do it together. And it's not cliche. I believe it can happen.
We live in the best part of the world. The Caribbean region is the best spot on the planet. I've been all over the world. I've been to every continent, and I've seen the world, but no place like the Caribbean. There's no
Yeah.
place like the Caribbean,
But
and
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm
and
sorry.
so we have to cherish that. God put us in this region for a reason, and we cannot allow our countries to be run down by drugs and guns and criminality. We got to invest more in education. We got to make sure that we produce the best citizens. And so we got to put more into our people and we got to expect more. And so, I have great expectations for the next leaders that are rising up throughout the Caribbean. And we got to do it. We got to make it happen. And we cannot sit idly by and just allow a few politicians who don't know their right hand from their left hand to lead us down into an abyss. We got
Yeah.
to demand more.
But as you are, because I know I had you on here for way past your time, but this has been going good. I didn't see my next guest, but as yet, I know he was having some trouble getting home. But I wanted to bring us to, without getting into American politics. I'm seeing African countries and Caribbean countries are, some people, for good reasons, are worried because we're not going to get any more aid. I see people are concerned that we're not going to get any, we're cut off. Africa cut off, Caribbean cut off, and as I listen to you, it seems like you are saying that this is an opportunity, like Burkina Faso. This leader, what he did, he basically cut off the aid that they were getting from France. He cut off the ties, then the colonial ties, and decided, listen, let us try on our own. Now we have a situation where someone is in the White House and said, we're cutting you off. And then, some people are worried about that. Do you see this as an opportunity for the Caribbean, or should the Caribbean really be worried about this aid and this support that we will no longer get? What are your thoughts, without going too much in the political, in the American politics?
I've been on public record, um, talking about our prime minister running around the world looking for free money, free aid. My position is, if we're going to build our country, let's build our country with our hands. Stop trying to get something free for somebody. And so we talking about climate change and carbon credits and free money. There's no free money. Nobody's going to give us anything free. And we have to stop looking for free things. And that's the psychological problem that we face in the Caribbean now, in Africa. And I'm glad that Abraham Toure and the rest of those leaders are saying that, listen, we don't want no aid. Why should Africa look for aid when Africa is the richest continent on the planet? They have rare earth material, which is the most expensive material in the world, only found in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Diamonds and gold, only found in Africa. And so, why are you looking for aid when you got everything there? You know, why are we looking for aid when we have everything here? We have what we need.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to make sure that our people are productive. We're producing a bunch of lazy people in the Caribbean, people who don't want to work, and we're looking for, we go to exploit countries that produce below minimum wage workers. And so that's what we do. But we need to tell our citizens to listen, if our country is to be great, we all got to work. We all got to build it. We ain't got to look to America for no aid. We got to look to America for opportunities, but not aid. And so America is going to prosper, and America, we are in the orbit of America in the Caribbean. And as America prosper, we will prosper. But we just have to
Mm-hmm.
position ourselves to be able to benefit from the prosperity of America by making sure that we could be a part of the market, making sure to be a part of stock markets, making sure that we could be a part of manufacturing and so on. We could position ourselves. Nothing stops anyone from the Caribbean of starting a company in America. To start a company in the USA costs $135. $135. And you could be a part of the American system. The problem is that we lazy and we want somebody to do something for us. And that's not how it works. Most of the countries that are benefiting from America are foreign countries, are European countries. We look at the leaders of Google and the leaders of all these countries. They're foreigners. All of them are foreigners. But they go into America and they benefit. Why can't the Caribbean do the same? Why can't we do the same? And so we just have to take advantage of the position, place ourselves in the way of the wave, and as the wave comes of prosperity, we all benefit.
Yeah, yeah. But there seemed to be a real fear. There's a fear that our leaders have, and I believe that it's a fear that we have grown up with as Caribbean people, because we were so dependent on the colonizer. We were, as you said, after independence, we just didn't know. We still didn't know how to be on our own. You
Mhm.
know, and we look at this man here on the screen, and that's why we are amazed at him. He's 36, and probably that's why he could take all of these risks, but he doesn't have the fear of failure. And I think a lot of our leaders, if we fear that we're going to fail, if we lose our dependency on our colonizers.
But I
What
think
are your thoughts?
I think also the greatest thing that we need to understand that if you are in government or a leader, it's not about you, it's about the people. And I think we lose sight because we think that it's about us. We want to get enrich ourselves. We want it for ourselves. We want it for our family. We want it for our friends and our cronies, but it's about for the people. We got to make sure that every citizen benefits and every citizen prospers. And so that's where we lose sight of the whole big picture, and that's why we fail. That's why we failed in Africa. That's why we're failing in the Caribbean. I mean, when you dissect all of the Caribbean countries and you see the problems they faced from independence to now, it was all about me, 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 and what I can get for myself. And so it's never about you, it's never about you. It's about always about the people. And that's what we cannot lose sight of. And we got to always remind ourselves that, listen, as leaders, it's about making sure that we could build for the people. So,
Yes.
Mafia, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
I know. My goodness, this is cool. I love this. Somebody said Caribbean leaders are due to meet in Barbados in February. Good time to prepare our expectations and present at the CARICOM meeting.
Oh,
We can
wonderful.
even, I mean, we could start on crime. We could tackle use one thing, you know.
Well, start a working group, Marcia. If you can get a group of people together, and then we can begin to put a dialogue together and put a working group and put a document together to present to the CARICOM heads of government meeting so that we can let them know what we want for our country in crime. But also to I think self being able to feed ourselves in our countries. We gotta work our land
Mm,
better, and we are not working our land in the Caribbean. I mean, when we were slaves, our land worked. We produce crops in our land. We are no longer slaves, and the crops dying. So we got to
mhm.
fix that. We got to fix that. And
Yeah,
so we still have to eat as production goes on, as tourism boom, as hotels grow. The people still got to eat. So as they come in, who's feeding those people? And so we got to make sure grow crops in our region so that we could feed the people, so that we can be able to keep the money in our own homes.
yes, yes, yes. Listen, you have to come back to us, and this has been really, really rich and enlightening, and I think this is great. This we were talking about corruption and dealing with leadership, and I guess that's how we went into governance. And I
Yes.
think I think that is really wonderful. We didn't get to touch on immigration situation, but I have two persons in the diaspora coming on now that will be dealing with that. Thank you so much, Dr. Stewart, for joining us and for just being so open and candid with us this evening. It's been quite enlightening.
Thank you so much, Marcia. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Yes, sir. God bless.
God
We'll be
bless.
calling on you again.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.